So continuing our conversation on the location of services. So we're looking at and kind of switching to the second half of the chapter, or the second topic of the chapter, which is size and distribution of settlements. And this will play into the idea again of also location of services and why we find services where they are. So the two ideas are going to start coming together here. So the example, or what we want to understand for the essential question, is analyze why services and settlements are distributed into certain patterns. So that's kind of a key idea going forward here. So again, there's our revisiting to our past concepts. Why do stores like Target, Walmart, concert venues not exist in small towns? Again, it's based on the idea of threshold and range within the central place theory. Okay, but now we also want to add in this idea here known as the gravity model. So the gravity model states that the best location for a service is going to be the one that minimizes distance for most of its potential clients by basing its travel to reach the service. So you want to find it, again, trying back to the central place theory, what is going to be the minimum distance, or kind of minimizing the distance for people to go to the location in order to get this service. So what's going to be the best location and have the most pull? Think gravity, holding you and keeping you on the ground. What's going to be the thing that pulls you there to this one location? What's going to be the best thing that's going to optimize the number of clients that you can get? Okay, so again, you want to be close to the greatest number of users as they will go more frequently. All right, just like if we were to put up, let's say, again, going with the idea of professional sports, if I'm setting up a professional sports team in, let's say, Wilmer, Minnesota, okay, Wilmer has like 20,000 people, but that is, at least, I think, an hour and a half, 2 hours west of the Twin Cities. If it's nowhere near any major towns other than Wilmer, St. Cloud, again, is like an hour and a half, 2 hours away. Mankato, kind of the same thing. So it's like that doesn't seem really, really convenient because people have to drive further and further out for all that. Great for the small town, but not great for the rest of it. So you want to be closest to the greatest number of users of said service. Okay, because we want to refer to this, back to this, the further away you are from something, the less likely you are probably to use it. Okay, so this is what comes in with the rank size rule when we talk about how large should a settlement be. So typically when we think about it, okay, a rank size, okay, a country's nth largest settlement is going to be 1/nth the population of the largest settlement. It applies mainly to more developed countries. All right, we'll kind of talk about why here in a sec. So the idea is that the second largest city should be half the size of your largest city, and the fifth largest should be 1/5, or it should be fairly similar to that. So if you look at the United States in the top 5 cities, again, this is based on 2010 census data. New York City had about 8.5 million people throughout its 5 boroughs. Okay, Queens, Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Staten Island had about 8.5 million people. Okay, the second largest city, LA, had about 4 million. Okay, so that fits pretty well. Chicago, about in between, about 2.75 million. So that's about a third. Okay, Houston in Texas, has about 1/4 of New York City, again about 2.3 million, and then Philadelphia, okay, had about 1.5 million. So again, it actually played out pretty well within the top 5. And what you want to see is this to kind of, or what we see in many countries anyway, again in the more developed world, fairly similar ideas within the rank size rule, which means this is going to draw in a lot of people. This will draw in, all these places are going to draw in a lot of people, but then you'll have smaller cities and services provided spread out in other locations. And you can do it based on state too, a little bit, okay? Because Minneapolis, St. Paul, we're kind of one big metropolitan area. You can think Minneapolis has 400,000, St. Paul 300, so it doesn't really fit there. But Rochester, okay, has about 110,000, and that's about a third-ish of St. Paul, while Bloomington and Duluth, again, about a fourth and a fifth, relatively speaking. So it doesn't exactly apply within Minnesota, again, based on our information. But what about Dakota County, where Simley High School is located? What does it look like here? Okay, so that's something that we'll do in class. But also think about how does that apply to other states? What about Canada? What about, Mexico? What about Japan? What about England? So it's really interesting to kind of play out and do that. And so we'll do that more within the class. Now, to the other side is what we call the primate city rule. Okay, and this is where the largest settlement has more than twice as many people as the next largest settlement, which means if I have a city that has 20 million people, the next largest city is not going to have 10 million. It'll probably be closer to 5 or 6 million, if even that. Okay, and mostly we see these in less developed countries where usually the capital city has the largest population or largest concentration of people, and it dwarfs anything ever close to it. There aren't any similar sized cities. And because of that, we see a lot of problems. So within the idea of Mexico City, okay, is 5 times larger than the next one. About Guadalajara is about 4 million, I think, is what it comes down to. I think Mexico City is about 20 million. I could be wrong on that. It could be 15 million. I don't remember off the top of my head, but way larger than Guadalajara, which is number 2. Okay, so why does this matter? Why does rank size or primate city actually matter when we talk about this? Why is it just kind of a cool thing, or what's kind of the issue here? Well, rank size is considered to be more equal, more equitable, more fair in terms of quality of life because the settlements are of sufficient size and often more spread out, which shows that wealth exists in a variety of different places throughout a given country or region of a country. Because if you're able to spread out the number of very large settlements, very large services that are spread out, so it's again not just concentrated in one location, it's showing that wealth exists in these different pockets of a country. All right, and I think that's a good thing to see in many states too. Just talking about the United States as a whole, to see it in many different small pockets, even like within Minnesota, we know that not all the largest and most expensive wealth, or the vast majority of the wealth, is just found in the Twin Cities. We know that there are pockets of wealth in other parts of the state. All right, and so again, that would mean that that's a better sign than it is just kind of concentrated in the Twin Cities, or that all the wealth was concentrated in New York City. It's not. A lot is there, but again, we know that there are various pockets within the country. However, if you look at a country, again, taking Mexico as an example, okay, and if you're going to say, well, Mexico City offers pretty much, the best services and the most services, and everyone else has to kind of drive to Mexico City to get said service, let's say, for, cancer treatment, or, to go see let's go see Taylor Swift, that's showing that there's, again, not as much services provided or offered based on the fact that there's only so much influence that this country has because it's all located in one location. It's all found in one primate city. Okay. And so because where there is typically more wealth, there are more goods and services for everybody, and that's why you'd want to see it spread out rather than concentrated in one location. Okay. Because a primate city would show that there may not be enough wealth in society to pay for a full variety, or at least full variety in other parts of the country. Okay, it might be more difficult to obtain some of those services because of longer travels, and they can get medication or medical care, education, higher paying jobs, or will only be mostly focused in these few areas instead of, again, spread out and more diversified. But one could also argue against the idea that the primate city rule is wrong, but you have to think about why might that be and how does it get there? And could that apply to the United States? So the other type of idea here is also what we call periodic markets. Okay, because when we talk about being able to find these certain specific services, we also have to understand that some things only come around around certain places and certain locations at certain times. So think about a farmer's market or a handcraft market or fair. It doesn't come all that often, but they do come out occasionally. And so this is, again, mainly in less developed countries, but in many cases, again, the idea of a farmer's market has popped up more and more and more in, again, more developed countries. And again, even here in the Twin Cities, in the suburbs and in the main cities themselves. But they may not have, because it's more of a part-time thing, because again, it's periodic. So again, they come together to offer goods and services in order to provide for those things. I know, even here in the Twin Cities where it's like, hey, this is, free dental checkup day in the Twin Cities at these, certain like 3 or 4 locations throughout the metro area for those who can't afford health care, for dental care. It's like, yeah, that's great. It's a periodic market, but that also says that we have a lack of the services and affordability in healthcare for dentistry. All right. So, but again, you also think about that in many of those less developed countries, they offer services that they may not have, even if it's on a part-time basis, they might be lacking in those. All right. So there's a need for it. There's a niche market, but again, it could be the fact that these things are not always available to other people. And this again comes back to that idea again of a food desert with the idea of trying to fit in with the periodic markets. When we talked about the guerrilla gardener, okay, that fits in very, very well here in terms of the types of services that you don't necessarily find in many urban locations, again, lower income, people of color locations throughout the United States, being in those areas. And that's going to be something, again, we're going to focus and look a lot more on in class. So then the next video, we switch back to the distribution of business services, and then we'll focus on more of the urbanization piece, which is going to tie into chapter 13. So that's where we're going to stop here for this video.